All right, good morning, YouTube. We are live on the Falcons Podcast. We're going to bring in our Facebook groups, Atlanta Falcons fans on SI and Scott Kennedy Sports. And then we'll get talking 53 and practice squad, because that's the next thing that's coming up is what's next. What's next is the Falcons Podcast. Welcome in, everybody. It is Wednesday. It is almost game week, but it is one of the big weeks in the lives of literally thousands of NFL players. And the 53-man roster is in. There weren't a ton of surprises, but there's still some things to talk about with regards to some of the moves that have been made and will still be made over the course of the next 24 hours for the Atlanta Falcons. But first, Nick, how are you doing, my friend? Things good out west, and thanks for being here at 5:30 a.m. Seattle time.
Yeah, I'm doing okay. I still have a little bit of this cold remnant that's going on like 9 days now. So that's kind of starting to get a little bit mad because it's like, God, come on. I feel fine, but just like crud in my throat. But overall, pretty good. And counting down, man. Football's really right around the corner. The real stuff, right? It's only so many times we can talk about, well, the sample's not really truly valid because of X, Y, Z, but like you have nothing else to go on. Well, it's going to ramp up here. We're going to have real football and, real college football this weekend as well. I know we had that last weekend as well with Florida State dropping one to Georgia Tech. But, I mean, you know me, Scott. I love the college game as much as the NFL.
Yeah, and it's good. I'm looking forward to this weekend. I guess probably Miami, Florida is probably the game I'm looking forward to the most. And I'm biased in that because I do run the Gator site on SI also, and the Auburn site on SI. So I'll be much more involved in in college football this year than I have been recently, for sure. But we go live, and then we're going to get into the 53s. And as we say hello to people, a lot of the questions that we want to answer will be asked. So this will kind of be a Q&A format as we talk about some of the surprises, some of the moves, because I'm sure that'll be asked. You know, who do you think they'll pick up? Well, we'll see. I wrote down a couple of names that are maybes, but spoiler alert, I don't know that they'll claim anybody. I think they'll go after their 16 guys on the practice squad. That's what happens with 98% of the NFL, is there's very, very little movement the day after. So, but want to say hello to John Harrell. Good to see you, John. Says good morning, Scott and Nick and the Falcons family. And Austin Fries. I can't say this is a big surprise, but I mean, he wasn't on the initial our projections on Falcons SI making the team, but I think he's a really good player that has a chance as a 6th-round draft pick. He's cheap. He's big. Is Zion Logue, 6th-round draft pick out of the University of Georgia, was waived. And I guarantee you he's on a roster, either on someone's practice squad or 53 by the end of the day. By the end of today, he will have a job. That is a promise. He says, I was rooting for Logue to make the roster. Maybe he'll be a practice squad guy. If he's not, it means he's on somebody else's team. He will have a job, Nick. That is a absolute guarantee.
Yeah, somebody will pick him up. 6th-round pick, right?
Yes.
Overall, pretty good showing over preseason relative to his draft slot. So he'll get picked up somewhere. I mean, defensive line, there are bodies out there, but he'll definitely kick around. Will he make an active 53 or a practice squad? I would bet an active 53, but we'll see. But yeah, he was definitely one of the ones where it's like, did we really want to keep Heineke, like the third quarterback there? Maybe he's one of the ones who got squeezed because the NFL announcing the practice squad call-up emergency quarterback rule changed. I messaged you Monday. I was like, oh, well, there's that. We talked about that how many times? But yeah, so we'll keep an eye on him. I mean, maybe he's back to Atlanta. We'll see.
Yeah, 6'6" and 315 pounds. There's bodies out there, but there's not a lot of bodies like that out there. And that's what's going in his favor. He's just got stuff you cannot develop, which is just the sheer mass. Puts him in rarefied air, even amongst in NFL land. I mean, that's still a gigantic human being, and he'll probably be 330 in the next 2-3 years. He's one you want to hang on to somehow, some way, Nick.
And also, I think it speaks to where the Falcons are at as a team right now. And we've talked about it. This is a team that's going for it right now. I mean, the draft obviously wasn't like completely, all in on 2024, but pretty much everything else has showed that this is a team that's in it. Where other team we cover, Scott, the Broncos, they might have moved on from Eddie Goldman, right? To keep Logue. That's kind of the different paths. Watch what I do, not what I say. So we'll keep an eye on Logue and see what happens. But I definitely remember, I mean, heck, maybe he'll end up in Denver. They could probably use another defensive lineman down the depth chart, but we'll see.
For his sake, I'd like to see him on a 53 somewhere because it's significantly more money. If he gets waived, then he gets his regular. Yes, it's significantly more money if he ends up on a 53, just flat out. For the Falcons' sake, I'd like him on the practice squad. So kind of depends on where your loyalties lie, and most fans' loyalties lay with the team.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why they always take the team side when there's a holdout. Blah blah blah. I think of the person too. So, and I think a lot of this community does. It would be best for the Falcons if Zion Logue ends up the practice squad. It would be best for Zion Logue if he ends up on someone's 53. So, but either way, I am not worried about his short-term future. He will be on someone's roster by the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think it's probably the Atlanta Falcons practice squad.
Well, that happens most of the time, right? Fans are always like, oh no, we can't lose this guy. Most of the time, unless they're the veterans that are released outright, that's different. But the waived guys, they end up back. But just real quick, I did want to say hello to good morning to A137 Sauce. Good morning to you. I don't know. I love it. I'm here for it. You said your favorite game you're excited for this weekend, Scott, because you covered Florida-Miami. Great game, but Clemson, Georgia? I mean, what's one versus
I didn't even know they were playing.
Okay. Yeah, that's a big game. Georgia's favored by a lot.
Like I said, I've got tunnel vision.
Yeah.
I really do in this stuff because one, I'm really busy, but my interests are okay. When does Chelsea play? Does my son or my daughter have anything this weekend? When do the Falcons play?
Yeah.
And then the Braves are going to play. So yes, Clemson, Georgia would be good, but my interest, selfishly speaking, and someone probably already called me out on that in the chat. I get it. Is I know who Auburn and Florida are playing because I have a professional interest in those teams.
And by God, I'm going to make sure you know who Iowa's playing.
It will expand. It will expand. It kind of through osmosis. It will expand as it goes on.
We got 3 ranked matchups, Scott. 3 that are worth watching. Good prospects already. We don't have to get too far down that, but also Notre Dame goes down to Texas A&M. That'll be for week 1 on the road. That's great. And then Sunday we got USC LSU. So keep an eye. LSU has a quarterback who he's one of those ones where because he didn't play last year, we don't know, but there's some good buzz out of him. So we'll see.
So speaking of which, had one of the stories yesterday. It was about Peyton Thorne or Graham Mertz. Either one. I think it was Peyton Thorne talking about wanted 40 points. Auburn wants to score 40 points per game. Yes, this is an NFL thing. Hold on one moment. Wants to score 40 points per game. So I looked it up. There were 5 teams last year that scored 40 points. 3 of them had first-round draft picks at quarterback. The 4th one is Georgia, who will have a first-round draft pick this year. And the 5th one is Oklahoma, who always just scores 40 points. And hell, I don't know who they have at quarterback, but it might be a first-rounder one day. So, yes, quarterback matters.
Yeah, yep, it does. It was Dylan Gabriel, who now plays quarterback for Oregon. Back to the transfer portal, Dylan Gabriel. So we'll see.
Mark Schrader coming in with the chat. Silas, great to see you. Appreciate you the support you're showing in the chat. Mark Schrader coming in. Hope you're doing well in Texas. I think you sent us our heat. We had I told y'all on last week we had a false fall. It's supposed to be 95 today. So it's August, man. It's supposed to be hot. It's going to be hot all through September. We got another 4 or 5 weeks of hot down here, and that's when you're kind of happy to have the bends. Come October, you're like, what are we doing inside, man? September games, you're like, oh, thank God.
Yeah. In the Midwest right now, it's 100 degrees, but they have a humidity that is insane because of a phenomenon called corn sweat. Sounds made up. It's not. There's so much crops and the corn produce so much humidity that it adds another 10 degrees too. So it's kind of miserable this time of year. So thoughts and prayers to those dealing in the Midwest. My sister's air conditioning went out and it's like 90% humidity with 100 degrees. So she's melting. It's the wicked witch of the West there.
Literally melting in the cornfield. But thank you, Mark. Appreciate you. And the cheers with the coffee emojis. We'll drink to that. Brandon Yaller comes in with a super chat as well. Thank you for the support, Brandon. Hope you're doing well. He says, good morning, guys. Do you think this team is going to click out of the gate or take some weeks? I think that's a relative question.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's relative to your expectations. I think, obviously, I expect them to be better in week 10 than they are week 1. However, I expect week 1 to look better than pretty much anything we saw last year. So again, for your expectations, what are you expecting? Are you expecting them to be, clicking they're 100% on? No, I don't. Do I consider them to look better than they did last year? Yes, I do. So that's kind of a relative question, Brandon, on your own expectations for what you consider to be clicking out of the gate.
We've talked about it a lot on here. Thank you for the super chat, Brandon. The pass game is probably going to be a little bit discombobulated early on. There'll be some chunk plays here and there, but it's such a coordinated, synchronized effort, beautifully well-oiled timing pass game, as opposed to, Josh Allen going out there and playing hero ball pass game, which obviously with Kirk Cousins, it's what you expect. We have seen the Sean McVay disciples be able to run through quarterbacks and have great output offenses in that West Coast offense McVay tree. So maybe it's something, especially because Cousins has familiarity there with the Kevin O'Connell, another McVay disciple in Minnesota, that it's a little quicker as far as the install and verbiage and getting everything going. But I'll be curious to see how just the chemistry between the pass catchers and Cousins goes. And we mentioned on here before, something that shouldn't take as much coordination as the run game with the talent that you have at running back. So hopefully you'll lean on that early. So click out of the gate. There'll be some bumps here and there just because it's a lot of new products and just how the Falcons treated preseason. But relatively healthy and tougher opponents to begin. It'll get going, but I don't expect it to click out of the gate.
Chris F., good morning. Hope you are doing well. Michael Ronquillo, the Sunrise, coming in, says, good morning on the Falcons podcast. Good morning to you. And yeah, we should start getting some news pretty early this morning, pretty much right after we get off the air. So keep an eye on falconssi.com. We'll have everything updated. We broke some scoop yesterday, actually. Some of those 4,000 worders that Daniel Flick is putting out on these on the bubble guys has paid off because he had the scoop on when they were getting cut yesterday, and he'll probably have the scoop on when they get signed today. So hoping to see guys like O.J. Hilaire back, Natron Brooks, Damon Harris, those type guys. Hoping to see them come back, but it will be happening. Nicholas the Fifth, Nicholas the V5 here. What's everyone's biggest surprise of the initial 53? And I'm going to combine this one with ATL Connor saying, how do you feel about Natron Brooks being? So what was your being cut? What was your biggest surprise, Nick?
I guess my biggest surprise was Heineke making it, not because he could save money, but just because he looked so poor. And I feel like there's not a lot of upside with Heineke right now. Now, granted, he's better than Paddock or Rourke or whatever on the end, but still, I mean, that's fresh blood. I do wonder, we talked about on here before, the injury history with Penix and Cousins, how much that played a role in it. But it's not like, Heineke's been here, knows the system through and through because he's been with the system and the team for a bit, running the same under the same offensive coordinator. So that one surprised me a little bit. Seeing Malone make it, we talked about that a lot. The special teams value, maybe special teams value shifting a little bit, Scott, from safety cornerback more to linebacker tight end with the kickoff rules, because you see Malone make it and Brooks not make it. So maybe there's a shift there in how teams are valuing those types of bodies and players. But those are the ones that stand out off the top of my head.
Malone looked great on special teams. I mean,
exactly.
he made this team as a special teams guy. Good morning, Michael. Hope you're doing well. Tabro comes in. He says kind of the same thing. He says, I'm surprised about Malone being in there, but we kept 9DL. So I guess the question is it surprising? There wasn't anything that made me go, what? Like the last year I put or 2 years ago, I put in the title. It was when Anderson Abdul, I get him and the running back confused now in my brain. When he got cut, he was the best defensive lineman on the field during the preseason. I'm like, yes, this is a surprise cut to me. This is a surprise one to me. There's a couple this year that are just like, oh, like eyebrow raisers, but there's no, wait, what? What do you, am I missing this? And they did bring him back, and he did end up playing a ton of snaps and then got a decent contract afterwards. I'm like, guys, if an idiot like me can see this, then everybody should be able to see this. Very deep on the defensive line. We've said all year, this is the deep, to Tabro's point. Now, Malone's on the edge, but when you look at the defensive line, And then they put James Smith-Williams in the DL instead of with the edge group, where James Smith-Williams really is kind of more of an edge. But Brandon Dorlus, Ruka Rohoro, those guys weren't getting cut. Contavious Street has played really well. Eddie Goldman coming back. And Harry says, do we actually get to see him play this year for the first time in 3 years? Yeah, I think so. He's made it through camp. You've made it through the hard part. You might as well see the games if that's what you're doing. Personal note on that. We can talk about that later. So yes, I think we do see Eddie Goldman and Keithan Allen Johnson with the stars over on Facebook. Thank you. Says, good morning, guys. Does the practice squad get assigned today?
We'll start to see guys trickle through, but it'll be mostly vets, I think, right? The waived guys will take a little longer since that probably just went through. I'm not sure exactly when the waiver day is, but the vested veterans will have a chance to sign on practice squads immediately. I mean, we already saw it. I think Boston Scott, right, running back, ended up with the Steelers. So a few other names that stand out to me. Scott, just looking over it, I saw the comments mention Kevin King as well. He was one we were watching. Julian Davenport not making it, and Dane Cruikshank, who stood out a good bit with the third team, I thought at least, when watching them.
Yeah, I would love, again, selfishly speaking, I would love to see Davenport back on the practice squad. Looking out for his best interests, I think he's an NFL guy. I've seen worse tackles out there on 53s. So Davenport, and it speaks to the depth of this roster when you're cutting guys like this now. As Harry says, somebody's watching our defensive line cuts. Okay. Defensive tackle Prince Emil, he didn't show me a ton, but he's got some time in the league. LaCale London played a lot last year and played pretty well this year. He was cut. We already mentioned Logue. And then defensive lineman Damon Harris out on the edge had a fantastic camp, and he's been in the league for 7 years. He hasn't played a ton. There's a huge feature on him on Falcons SI too. But yeah, there's the defensive line for the first time ever was really the strength of this team. It's really good depth in that area. Nick, did you freeze up, or you? Yeah, you might have frozen up on me. So every once in a while, he can get that look in his eye at 5 a.m. I'm not sure, but he held on to that one just a little bit too long while I was passing it over to him. So I think Nick froze up for me a little bit. Let's say hello to some folks here again. Like Mr. Shonoff says, good morning, guys. Would you have kept Malone over guys like King, Harris, or Brooks, even though Malone is a great special teams player? You look at the corners. They kept 5. I guess one of the bigger surprises for me is just kind of the overall numbers. Not necessarily, okay, is Taylor Heineke on this team a surprise? No, because he's already taken his pay cut. We've talked about that before. He took his pay cut in the spring, so there's no financial benefit to cutting him. Now, do you think it's worth hoarding an asset is kind of how I put it. We know how quarterback starved this league is. If Taylor Heineke doesn't push for a move because he wants to be a number 2 somewhere, then fine. He's a good asset to have as a number 30 quarterback, as long as he is being a mentor / professional. I've been adamant since the second they drafted Michael Penix Jr. that Michael Penix Jr. needs to take every single number 2 snap possible. And it sounds like that's kind of the way it's going to be, Nick. And I think, Nick, you're freezing up on me again. Apologies, y'all. So we might be finishing this one solo today, everybody. So bear with me. So Mr. Shonoff, Malone was awesome on special teams. And yes, you need those guys. Would I like to see King with 5 cornerbacks taken? You say AJ Terrell, Mike Hughes, D. Alford, Clark Phillips, and then you kept Antonio Hamilton. Now, one of the things about Antonio Hamilton was he was actually getting some reps at safety also in training camp. So with 4 safeties, Jesse Bates, Justin Simmons, Richie Grant, and Micah Abernathy, the versatility there to move around, I think, is what saved Antonio Hamilton a spot. Would I have liked to see, one of those guys maybe over a Taylor Heineke? That's where you start asking those questions. Richard Pierce has some news as well. He says, did Arizona cut Desmond Ridder? Yes, they did. So that trade kind of ended up to be much ado about nothing because Rondale Moore got hurt. God bless him. And then Desmond Ridder got cut. So Desmond Ridder is a free agent here in a couple hours. I wouldn't think he's going to get claimed on waivers. We'll see. He could have been wrong before. But he'll be a free agent. He'll be on somebody's team here eventually. He's a adequate number 2 somewhere. That he'll have a job this year as well. Some of the other interesting cuts. This one kind of flew under the radar a little bit. So I might be breaking this news to a lot of y'all. Mike Ford was who signed a contract with I think it was the Texans. He was cut last year. He played a lot of snaps last year for the Atlanta Falcons, and he was cut. Unless I'm just completely confused, but I thought he got a pretty decent 2-year contract, and he was cut. That one caught my attention. Carl Lawson is out there too. I don't know how interested I am in him. He didn't make the team in Dallas. And Sterling Shepard, another guy out there as well. KB82 asked a question about Nate Landman earlier. He says, how's Nate Landman look? Nate Landman has looked really good. He was a lock to make this roster. That was maybe the surest bet of all sure bets were the 4 linebackers that were going to make it. Caden Ellis, Troy Anderson, Nate Landman, and J.D. Bertrand, the rookie from Notre Dame. So let's see if we can do this again. If he's back for real this time. Nick, how you doing?
I don't know what's going on. I got my task manager up watching the Wi-Fi, so something's going on there. But we did have wind and rain yesterday. Who knows? But yeah, we'll see. Might have to go up and restart the old router before the Broncos show. But maybe 82.
He says I tried boiled peanuts for the first time at a Georgia Tech game. They're kind of gross. My dad always joked, if oysters are your thing, he says, but you got to be impressed with the guy who tried it the first time, the first person to ever try one of those things. So boiled peanuts, I love them. I think they're great, but yeah, the aesthetics of them, they are a little gross, especially if they're cold. But they're good. They're just salty. It's like crunchy, salty.
I can't say that I've had them. What I'm trying to get out to talk about delicacies out here in Pacific Northwest, what I'm trying to try is a gooey duck. You ever heard one of those, Scott? A gooey duck?
Mm-mm.
Okay. It's a kind of a mollusk that has a water spout, and people like run in when it's low tide and the waves go in and they try to dig them up. They're kind of a Eastern delicacy, but they look concerning. It looks like geoduck, but they're gooey ducks. I won't share it on here because I don't want to get flagged by YouTube, but they're a little phallic looking out there, but the people love them, man. So I'm looking for a gooey duck.
Welcome to the show, everybody. Now I'm seeing people in the chat talking about 300 yards passing. So we haven't had one in 2 years in Atlanta. Is that true? Because Ridder I kind of call him the opposite of a box midfielder, where a box midfielder is really good from 18 to 18, and then once you get into the penalty area, you lose your mind.
He had 347 versus Tampa Bay in that loss.
Yeah, and he had 329 against Houston.
300 against the Commanders.
307 against Washington in a loss. 347. So yeah, we've had 347 yards on that one. They moved the ball at times. It's just that when he would move the ball, then he'd have turnovers. Like I said, all turnovers are not created equally, and Desmond Ridder, God bless him, he got his money's worth on his turnovers. Let me see. Nick's kicking, coming in again. Good to see you. He's asking a little bit about Eddie Goldman making the roster, but Zion and Brooks not making it. I think that, again, that goes to, we think we can re-sign our own guys to the practice squads. Eddie Goldman is a veteran who would get snuffed up pretty quickly on waivers if he's playing. So I think this is a matter of roster management. And if you lose him, it's a calculated risk. Zion and Natrone played really well, especially Natrone. Zion showed me a prospect, not necessarily, oh, he was great out there. I saw a prospect. Let's be straight about that. I saw a guy who has unusual size at 6'6", 315, 320 pounds. That's rare size. moved well enough at a position that's hard to find body types like that. So I saw a prospect that I want to hold on to. I saw a player in Brooks. Brooks is a player. Chris Blair is another one. When you start talking about, the numbers game and does keeping a fourth running back, keeping Jason McClellan, keeping a third quarterback, costs guys like this a place on the 53. The Falcons are hoping it doesn't cost them a place on their 69-70, including their practice squad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Keith Rudman asks Heineke or Ritter. Heineke. Heineke's content being a number 3.
Yeah, I think with Heineke versus Ritter, the question isn't, would you rather roll a dice on a guy long term? No, that's your Michael Penix is in that role. So somebody who can come in and spot start in a scenario and be the number 3. It's a different role, right?
The question I've had, and for Keith, a Denver Broncos fan would pay interest in this, is Heineke or Stidham.
I'd rather have Stidham, I think.
I'd rather have Heineke, and it's not close.
Yeah. Heineke
has done something in this league. Stidham has done nothing except sit around and have people talk about him. 4 starts in 5 years on 3 different teams. Heineke's accomplished something in this league. Stidham has not.
I hated his product at the Commanders so much. It's the unknown, right? It's the mystery box of it all.
Yeah, it's like I'd rather have the 0 than the negative. I'd rather have. It's just Stidham has done 0 in this league. He's done nothing. In 5, he's going on his 6th year in the NFL. He's got 4 starts. And you're telling me you'd rather have this guy? There's a reason why he's only got 4 starts. And it's not like he's been playing for the Kansas City Chiefs. He's been playing for some bad teams.
Yeah. Gosh, who was he? He was behind Brady, I believe. So that's obviously not happening. He was behind Derek Carr. As well. I mean, Derek Carr's accomplished. So this was really his first super chance to be, and then behind Russell Wilson. So I mean, yeah, it's
you don't want either one of them, to be honest with you. But I'd rather have Heineke than Jarrett Stidham.
Yeah, yeah,
that's more of the question. Let's see. Jim asks, have you been watching Hard Knocks with the Bears? I've watched 10 seconds of Hard Knocks in my life. Mm-hmm. It was a guy going in and getting cut, and I said, nope, I'm done with this. I don't want to watch it. I'm one of those that gets invested. It's like if did y'all ever watch Frasier at the time? Like the first few seasons of Frasier were awesome, and then it became. That's why I didn't like The Office. The Office was basically how awkward can Michael make everybody feel, and when it's awkward, I feel awkward. I'm like, I don't want to feel awkward. I want to think this is funny. So I didn't watch Hard Knocks. Never watched it.
Yeah, I watched the very first one with the Chiefs, and that was enough for me. It was fine, but it's not football, right? It's the drama behind the football, and I don't care to know every single detail and girlfriend and whatnot about these players, honestly. So,
Kelly says he's the great Cornholio. Are you threatening me? Nick might not get that one.
I get it.
Okay. Yep. KB says Allen Robinson's available. I had Allen Robinson, I feel like, on a fantasy team 25 years ago. Has he done anything, or is this what about Julio Jones? What about Michael Thomas type of thing? Or is he, Logan Thomas is out there too, y'all. Logan Thomas got cut, big bodied wide receiver / tight end. They call him a tight end, but he still had 500 yards last year. Logan Thomas is still a productive player. So that one, where would you go? Is there a wide receiver out there? Sterling Shepard, I mentioned him. He got cut. These guys are starting to get old.
Terrence Marshall, 2nd round pick from the Panthers. Granted, if you're being waived from the Panthers, is that really something you're interested in? Donovan Peoples-Jones, athlete, but didn't really amount to much. We'll see. Yeah. The Terrence Marshall Jr. would be a great ad. I mean, he didn't do very much, but we'll see. I mean, wide receiver is one of those positions. We always say there's a lot, but the good ones, get paid and are kept around, even the mediocre ones, right? So we'll see.
Michael says Bailey Zappi or Taylor Heineke. I'm going Heineke again.
I'll go Heineke,
I go back to Senior Bowl and just said that Bailey Zappi is an offensive coordinator in waiting. I mean, I didn't see an NFL quarterback there. Going back, Taylor Heineke has proven something in this league, whether he's a career 500 guy on a decent team a wild card who can come in and maybe eke out a win. Taylor Heineke is significantly better than Zap. We haven't seen the best. Type in Taylor Heineke reference, go to his game logs and look across it and look and see what he's accomplished. He's okay. We've seen the absolute worst of Taylor Heineke under Arthur Smith, and so be it. I'll let you draw your own conclusions there. Let's see here. Chris says, "Good morning, everyone. What's the current roster number and how many more cuts does Atlanta need to make?" They're good. You have to be at your 53 by 4 o'clock yesterday. They will still make some moves. There will still be some moves made. But right now, I think we're focusing on. I read the chat. Heineke or Mac Jones? Probably Heineke because I don't want Mac Jones around. I think Mac Jones is probably a better quarterback though. Focusing on practice squad. Practice squad today is really where the focus will be. The 16-man practice squad, and hopefully for the Atlanta Falcons' sake, they get a lot of these guys back.
Yeah. I mean, we're watching Natrone Brooks, we're watching Cruikshank, Julian Davenport, of course, King, Zion Logue,
Chris Blair,
I was going to say as well.
I'm watching OJ Hilaire. I want to see him back too.
Carlos Washington Jr., get another running back on there. And
he was with the practice squad last year. So again, I will feel really happy for these guys if they get nabbed on. I don't want to see them go to another practice squad. And I don't know that they will. I feel like Atlanta's got a good thing going here. I'm biased. It doesn't mean I'm wrong. You've got guys that want to, again, they're biased too. But, Terry Fontenot and Raheem Morris said the same thing. People want to be here. And when you're able to bring those guys back, if they sign with another practice squad, maybe they're getting a little bit more money or whatnot. But I want to I'm hoping that they don't end up on other practice squads if they've got a spot open for the Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, we're looking at the roster. I know a lot of people. I'm glad the people are here, talking that we need more wide receiver talent in Atlanta, because that's something that we've talked about for a bit that had mixed opinions, I feel like, but coming around there, especially if you have a guy like Cousins, you want to be able to pick out pre-snap matchups, and that means you need to have guys who can win quickly on the outside and get those matchups. Joe01 says, why doesn't the NFL expand to 58 with all the money they're making, more opportunities for more players? I think the players union would probably have something to do about that. I'm not sure exactly what the power players and the stances are there. We could see it expand. There's another CBA probably around.
Nick just froze up, and I'm going to be a little more cynical about this. Joe, the idea is forced parity. It's to the same reason why you are rewarded for losing in the NFL. And they, tanking is a bad word, yet everybody does it. So the more players you're allowed to keep, the rich basically, they want good players playing for other teams. They don't want you to hoard players. If you're good enough to play for someone, they want you playing for someone for a competitive balance. The dream for the NFL for a long time has always said if everybody was 8-8, now it's 16 games. So if everybody's 8 or 9 or 9-8, that's the NFL's dream. So the reason why they cap the number of players on an active roster is for competitive balance. That's why they did it in NCAA. They moved from X amount of scholarships down to 85, was it, for a long time? Was basically competitive balance. They didn't want Alabama with 120 guys on there when 50 of those guys could go play somewhere else. So they capped the number of scholarships. If I heard this right, again, you heard I haven't paid near as much attention to college football as I used to. It used to be my professional, personal life. They're expanding the scholarships again. Now, when you talk about the rich getting richer, my goodness. The good news is you're allowed to transfer out without any penalties for those players. If I'm part of a 120 Alabama or Texas squad and I'm 16th on the depth chart, at least I can leave without sitting out a year. But Joe, the reason why is forced parity in the league. That's why. Let's see here. KB82 said, is there a player from the Broncos that they cut that you would want the Falcons to take a look at? Probably not. There's players out there that I would want the Falcons to go to look at first. I mean, there's one, not a receiver out there that they cut. Tim Patrick would be someone that you'd be interested in, but he's already been nabbed. So, I would say no. The Broncos just aren't deep enough to do that. You look at the positions, like where could you're always looking for good players, but offensive line, no. Defensive line, no. Edge rusher, no. Safety, come on. I mean, look at the Broncos safeties. Cornerback, no. Wide receiver, no. Quarterback, they didn't cut anybody. So, is there anybody out there from the Broncos you'd want the Falcons to look at? Not necessarily. And that's just a reflection of where the Broncos are in their rebuild. The Broncos are 2022 Atlanta Falcons. That's where they are. And that was the low point for Atlanta. This should be like one of the low points in the rebuild. As they start the rebuilding, they should hit bottom and start moving back up. But that's why. Chris Walker brings up another name real quick. He says Lewis Seen, I think that's his last name, probably blowing that up, but he was a first-round draft pick out of University of Georgia, was cut by the Vikings. Do you think he would be a good depth piece at cornerback? I think his phone will be busy because he'll be cheap, and he'll have his choice to come in and play for cheap on a cheaper contract. So he'll clear waivers because no one will want his rookie contract because it starts getting expensive as you move along. And then I think he will have plenty of options. Should he be looked at? Yes, he should. Should I think I should sign him? After he broke his leg his rookie season, he just has not been the same. That's all I got for y'all. Any thoughts on Caleb Fairley, the other cornerback? I see you, Nick. We're gonna see you over at Mile High Huddle. Any thoughts on Caleb Fairley? Yeah, damaged goods. He's been hurt for a long time. He was hurt coming out in the draft, and he hasn't really been able to get healthy. So Caleb Fairley on that one is damaged goods. So the guys that kind of caught my attention, Mike Ford, former, and I don't even call Fairley injury prone. I would just call him injured. I mean, he had like back problems. That's kind of scary for a player. But you got, Mike Ford, former Falcon, available. Desmond Ridder was in the news. I'm not advocating for him. Falcons have their quarterbacks, and Desmond Ridder needs a fresh start. He got one, and he's going to need another one. Sterling Shepard, I'd like to see what he has left in the tank. Y'all brought up Allen Robinson as well. I've thought of Logan Thomas as someone that's interesting to me as well. Kadarius Toney, no. And Carl Lawson, might be worth kicking the tires on, but I think the Cowboys are trying to bring him back. And then we're going to get out of here. We are done for this Monday till next Monday, because Harry Marshall Wood says, y'all going to be on next week, right? Yes, we are. Monday and Wednesday. We'll be here at 8:30, and it will be game week. Arthur Smith coming back to town with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. Cordero Patterson, I know we're all going to cheer. We might boo Arthur Smith, but by God, Cordero Patterson better get a cheer. And I expect him to. I really enjoyed watching him as an Atlanta Falcon. But I'm going to get out of here. I hope y'all have a great day. Keep it locked on to falconsi.com, because there will be plenty of news coming out today. And there's some great features that Daniel Locke does on that site for us that I think you'll really enjoy. Thanks for being here, everybody. I want to say a special thank you to Mark Schrader coming in with the super chat, for Brandon coming in with a super chat, and Keith and Ellen Johnson coming in with the stars over on Facebook. That's all I got for you. Y'all have a great rest of your week. Enjoy the first weekend of college football as we get into game week and week one in the Pittsburgh Steelers. Thanks for being here, everybody.